The Axis of Resistance dropped 2 new hype videos yesterday that we'll take a look at, one from the Houthis and one from Hezbollah. More information about the UN employees who were accused of taking part with Hamas in the October 7th attack into Israel, and there's rumors of a possible ceasefire coming forward in Gaza. So let's get into it. I'm recording this at 8:30 a.m. Central on Sunday, January 28th, 2024. Starting with the Houthis down in Yemen. We'll play this video here. This was released as part of what they say was a military exercise titled Battle of the Promised Conquest and Holy Jihad. They say this group that you're seeing here, it was called their RPG Army, which, can't imagine where they got that name from. A statement that accompanied this training exercise, they said the word of those in charge of the training confirmed the readiness to continue building and training to fight the battle of the promised conquest and the holy jihad against the American and Israeli enemy and everyone who has allied with them, based on the guidance of God Almighty. So good news, didn't really see anything in terms of additional Houthi strikes against assets in the Red Sea over the past 24 hours since they conducted a successful strike on the Marlin Luanda. More on that in a second. But the Houthis did put out a lot of information about this military exercise, targeting facilities and vehicles that were labeled or made to look like they belong to Israel or the United States. So again, Houthis not backing down anytime soon, starting to see a lot more from their propaganda arm, talking about how they are prepared for a larger scale war with the United States and Israel. Then U.S. Central Command yesterday put out a note, more information about the Houthi strike on the Marlin Luanda. They said it was struck with an anti-ship ballistic missile in the Gulf of Aden and was transporting a highly flammable liquid hydrogen mixture, which is one of the reasons that once it was struck, we continued to see all these pictures of that ship on fire. They say that U.S. vessels alongside naval ships from the French and Indian navies all responded quickly, provided critical firefighting material and assistance to the civilian crew who had depleted their organic firefighting capability. They say the multinational crew, the lives of which the Houthis endangered, was made up of 22 Indian and 1 Bangladeshi crew member. The rapid response from U.S., Indian, and French navies were able to extinguish the fire, which resulted in no casualties. They said the ship remains seaworthy and has continued its previous course. So this was, all things considered, one of the more notable attacks that the Houthis have carried out in recent days. It's hard to say which of these are more significant than others. It kind of comes down to which actually strike their vessel. A lot of these attacks are missing or being intercepted. And then, of course, here, striking the Marlin Luanda that is containing this, that is shipping this highly flammable liquid. That's pretty notable, right? Pictures of a vessel burning out there at sea, that's all over the internet. That's in a lot of ways, a win for the Houthis to be able to say, look what we did, look what they'll probably say stopped, but according to Central Command here, that ship continued on their course. Then turning to Hezbollah up north, they also put out their own kind of hype video yesterday. It was overlaid with a speech from their leader, Hassan Nasrallah. The speech there said, to the sacrificers, resistors, and fighters in all arenas and everywhere, to the wounded, to every father, mother, and wife. You are my father, my mother, and myself. How can I describe the beauty of your praises and count the grace of your trials? And though through you, Allah has delivered us from humiliation, O honorable sacrificers, may God reward you on behalf of your families, your people, your country, and the Ummah with the best of rewards and blessings. And may God whiten your faces in this world and the hereafter. So we are starting to see a little more from Hezbollah here as well. They did claim responsibility for 7 attacks against Israeli forces in the northern portion of the country yesterday. Getting a lot of back and forth right now, a lot more in the last couple days. We've got these videos coming out. There's another one that Hezbollah put out kind of celebrating the martyrs that have fallen in combat engagement with Israeli forces since October 8th. And now we've got this one kind of hyping up the fighters. We're watching you, the sacrifices. We are with you. Your families are with you. That kind of, it's a lot of messaging coming out right now, which is notable, because it's not just coming out on the Hezbollah side. So we've got this Hezbollah hype video here, but Israel put out something similar in a lot of ways. They're continuing military exercises in the north, which is notable. Again, for a lot of reasons. This northern front is something that we've been watching since October 7th with the concern that this could escalate into a larger scale war. It has never really stopped. There's continued to be tit-for-tat engagements, small arms engagements, anti-tank guided missiles, mortars, and rockets fired back and forth, with Israel conducting multiple airstrikes as well as artillery and missile strikes into Lebanese territory. It hasn't materialized into a large-scale war yet, but Israel is preparing for that. A statement yesterday, this is quoting Manny Fabian from the Times of Israel. He said, as part of the process of increasing readiness on the northern border, the Northern Command held intensive training sessions last week to strengthen competence and readiness for the moment of decision. He says the 226th Brigade under the 146th Division, with combat engineers, tanks, artillery, and other infantry forces, carried out drills simulating fighting in urban areas more applicable to Lebanon amid winter weather, according to the Israeli Defense Forces. They say the drills came amid repeated attacks by Hezbollah and allied Palestinian terror groups in Lebanon and northern Israel, with fears of a wider conflict. So you have to take all of this together, right? There's messaging included here. Israel has always been preparing for a fight up north. That's nothing new. This does not signal the start of Israel preparing for a possible war with Lebanon. But when these things make it out in the public, it's showing not only are we ready, we're preparing for this fight. We're moving troops up to that theater of operations. There's a lot of messaging that goes in to any military operation, and both of these coming from, again, the Hezbollah hype video and the Israeli video and statements talking about preparations up north. You got to take all that into consideration amid fears of a wider conflict. Now, something that continues to be, in my opinion, incredibly underreported in traditional media, in major news sources around the world, the Islamic resistance in Iraq claimed responsibility for 7 more attacks against U.S. forces in Iraq and Syria over the course of the past couple days. The majority of these were drone attacks. I believe they said that some were attacked with missile strikes as well. Significant, well over 150 attacks against U.S. forces just since mid-October. These attacks didn't really kick off until the middle of October. It wasn't right on the 7th or the 8th. So 3 months, 150 attacks. The American troops in Iraq and Syria at this point are dodging and intercepting drones, missiles, and rockets on a near daily basis. It's significant. And from what I can see, the attacks carried out by the Islamic resistance in Iraq, an umbrella group of a bunch of Iranian-backed militias in those two countries, it's intensifying. It's hard to say for sure if the means of the attack are changing drastically. Still a lot of drones, one-way attack drones, that most of which are being shot down. But the intensity of the attacks, the intensity of these strikes has jumped up quite a bit in recent weeks. Then yesterday we talked about a pretty significant accusation made by Israel. Israeli intelligence came out saying that as many as 12 UN employees were taking part in the October 7th attack alongside Hamas into Israeli territory. We've got a few updates there. So on Saturday, Britain, Germany, Italy, the Netherlands, Switzerland, and Finland joined the United States, Australia, and Canada in pausing their funding to the UNRWA, the organization in Gaza that these UN employees were a part of. UN Secretary General Guterres said, quote, "While I understand their concerns, I myself was horrified by these accusations. I strongly appeal to the governments that have suspended their contributions to at least guarantee the continuity of UNRWA's operations." He said that 12 employees accused of taking part in the attack, 9 had been immediately terminated. So 9 were fired. We heard that yesterday from a UN official. He said that one of the 12 was confirmed dead, and the identity of the other 2 are still being clarified, but that all would be held accountable, including through criminal prosecution, which is a major component there. They said they are launching an investigation to find out what happened here and to hold those that took part responsible. Hamas responded to this as well, and I thought it was worth running through their version of events here to see how they're portraying this. They said, "We strongly condemn the termination of employee contracts based on information derived from the Zionist enemy, and the statement confirms that these are allegations without completing all the requirements of a fair and impartial investigation." They say the agency's call for the release of prisoners held by the resistance is an interference in what does not concern it and is not within its authority nor within the mandate granted to it. Moreover, it did not demand at the same time the release of thousands of Palestinian prisoners in enemy prisons, most of whom are refugees, some who have spent decades behind bars. So at this point, they're kind of mixing the UNRWA with the International Court of Justice, who made the claim at the genocide hearing a couple days ago that they're going to, that essentially they will hear the genocide claim. And one of the things that came out of that was they called on the immediate release of all hostages. So Hamas has taken issue with that, saying, why didn't you call for the release of Palestinian prisoners? And then they wrap up saying, it is clear that UNRWA has been subjected to blackmail by countries that support Zionist terrorism under the pretext of continued financial support. So there we kind of have the two sides of the story now. We still haven't seen the intelligence necessarily that Israel released. But I mentioned this yesterday. There's a couple things that are notable here. Israel has regularly accused the United Nations of, at the very least, allowing Hamas to continue some of their terrorist activities against Israeli forces. And for the most part, those are always denied. The UN says we completely, that is not legit. There's no truth to that. We stand by our core mission. In this case, the UN immediately fired some people. Multiple countries withdrew funding, and they kicked off an investigation. Of course, wait to see what that investigation shows. But it does seem like, again, outside perspective here, this allegation, this intelligence that was released appears to have more teeth to it than previous accusations. Then there are rumors starting to come out that a multi-phase ceasefire might be close to agreement between Hamas and Israel. Heads of Egyptian, Israeli intelligence, U.S. intelligence, a bunch of different officials are meeting in Paris here today and over the last couple of days. And what's coming out of that, again, these are leaks, right? So keep that in mind. The leaks say that phase one could be a 6-week ceasefire with women, children, and elderly hostages released in return for a number of Palestinian prisoners that were released from Israeli custody, and additional aid would then flow into Gaza. That's very big picture. I imagine they're going to dial in those numbers specifically, but kind of reading between this, it sounds like they're trying to get all women, children, and elderly released in phase one. And then all that would remain in terms of hostages in phase two would be soldiers. In the second phase here, they say that Hamas would release female and then male soldiers, and then finally the bodies of deceased hostages. They say as a part of this, supposedly, there would be an international guarantee that would see a permanent end to the war in Gaza. So again, this is ongoing, far from certain at this point. Again, we're going kind of off leaks that are making it out into the public. So a couple big notes here. They don't dictate the number of Palestinian prisoners that would be released from Israeli custody. Hamas has kind of dug in and said all, like every one of them, which is in the thousands at this point, to my understanding. Haven't seen a number dialed in there. And then the international guarantee, permanent end of the war in Gaza, that is kind of just thrown in this article. It's like, oh, by the way, this is going to be a part of it as well. There's a lot to that. Does Israel allow Hamas to stay in power? Does Israel allow some of the Hamas leadership to remain in Gaza? What does Hamas accept in terms of Israeli presence on or close to the Gaza border? Like, there's so many aspects of that are just kind of brushed aside with a permanent ceasefire will be a part of this. I'm a little bit skeptical just in recent statements from Hamas, and personal opinion here. Recent statements from Hamas and from officials in Israel, both are kind of digging in hard on items that are not anywhere near being negotiated. We'll see, maybe. But for now, rumors continue that a possibility of a ceasefire is at least in the works. But that's all I got for now. Of course, if interested in this or other national security subjects, be sure to check out my Substack. Link is in the description below. We've started to bring some people on board, experts, to provide analysis of subjects related to what I'm talking about in these videos, more of a deep dive. So if you're interested in what I'm talking about here, head over there. The articles are freely available to anyone. We've also got ad-free, sponsor-free videos, same YouTube videos published over there on Substack. I think it's a lot of value. So if interested, check it out. But thanks for watching. I'll see y'all next time.